We all know the awful feeling of wasting precious dough, but throwing down an extra $10 million to replace a disgraced actor only weeks before a movie's official release? Yeah, some of these never-before-seen deleted scenes were pretty costly. Peter Dinklage has gone from being an esteemed character actor in the 2000s to commanding top-dollar salaries, even when he's not the primary figure in a movie or a TV show. For the final Game of Thrones season, for example, Dinklage took home a whopping $1.2 million per episode. There has to be some sort of compensation for not getting name-dropped even once in the annals of Westeros history, right?
I don't believe you're mentioned.
And while Jeff Goldblum's typical modern salary is hard to come by, it's doubtful the Hollywood veteran comes cheap either. But despite this reality, Goldblum and Dinklage were paid to shoot Thor Love and Thunder sequences that didn't make the Marvel film's theatrical release. Both men were reprising their characters from previous MCU features, yet the prospect of following up on past plot threads and utilizing two famous actors to do so wasn't enough to keep either of them in Love and Thunder's final cut, not even a brief cameo. Writer-director Taika Waititi has claimed that this footage will never be publicly released for the same reason it was cut in the first place. He just didn't think these sequences were that good. Not even the mighty acting talents of both Dinklage and Goldblum could make their respective Love and Thunder screen time sterling enough to warrant public exhibition. Reshooting key scenes is a pretty normal occurrence when making comic book movies, but it isn't such a normal thing to do so without the scene's most critical cast member around. And yet, Toby Kebbell, the actor tasked with playing Doctor Doom in director Josh Trank's Fantastic Four, has revealed that he wasn't on set for the movie's reshoots. Instead, another actor portrayed Doom for these sequences.
We're finished. What? Yeah, we finished it. Do you want to see? Yeah.
This detail encapsulates what a mess Fantastic Four was to produce, with many scenes from the feature's initial cut being removed during reshoots. Particularly impacted during this process was the movie's original ending. 20th Century Fox has never officially released any of these VFX-heavy sequences, nor has it been made public how much the deleted climactic segments cost. Given that they were set in another dimension and deployed lots of CG elements though, one can only assume they weren't cheap. In the years since Fantastic Four's dismal box office run, dedicated folks on the internet have compiled a smattering of publicly released images and B-roll footage, giving the general public a sense of what these unreleased deleted scenes could have looked like. Pivotal moments seen in the Fantastic Four trailers, like Reed Richards desperately stretching out his arm on an alien surface, or Sue Storm crying over Johnny's body, appear to have been among these removed sequences. You can't have Shrek without Mike Myers, though Chris Farley was originally set to play the character before his tragic passing, and obviously would have killed it. It's hard to imagine everyone's favorite ogre without Myers' voice and the distinctive Scottish accent he employed for the character. That being said, it will probably blow your mind to find out that Myers originally performed the character with a completely different accent, a Canadian one to be exact.
Does that sound good to you?
No, not really, no.
Why was this Myers' first choice? Well, it's where the actor grew up, so he obviously had a lot to draw from in terms of inspiration. But Myers, a famous perfectionist, knew the role needed something else, so he decided to try it with a Scottish accent, both because he has family in Scotland and also because he thought that the accent represents working people, and thus ogres by extension. Today, that sounds like a no-brainer decision, but at the time, DreamWorks animation brass, not to mention Spielberg himself, were extremely concerned about overhauling the character. And it didn't have anything to do with the accent potentially reminding people of a certain other Scottish character Myers is known for.
Get in my belly!
The problem was that costly computer animation had already been created to match the Canadian voice Myers had concocted for Shrek. Changing him to a Scottish voice would require lots of moolah and energy. At the time, reports stated that the price for starting over on Shrek's animation cost as much as $5 million, though Myers has disputed that figure in recent years.
They spent some money, but not the amount of money that has been reported in the press, I'd like to point out. And by the way, I recorded it all for free one more time.
Still, whatever the final price actually was, removing the original Shrek scenes was not a cheap proposition. At least it worked out for the better in the end. The producers behind World War Z might have been happier to deal with actual hordes of zombies than all the chaos that unfolded behind the scenes of the 2013 Brad Pitt blockbuster. The already costly adaptation of author Max Brooks' novel originally had a sprawling, action-heavy third act involving Pitt's Jerry Lane brutally killing zombies in Russia. It was a massive conclusion, meant to make World War Z fit into a summer movie landscape defined by flicks like Michael Bay's Transformers epics.
You
have no soul. That is why I have no fear.
As the film entered the post-production phase, though, it became clear to all involved that the set piece traded depth for spectacle. Throughout 2012, artists like Lost creator Damon Lindelof were brought in to conjure up a new home stretch for World War Z, which would eventually evolve into a more intimate set piece that evoked classic zombie films by having Lane evade zombies in a hospital. It's never been divulged how much the original Russia-based finale cost. Reports indicate that the budget ballooned to $190 million, which must have included a good chunk for the original grand finish. The sequence's CG zombies, which were set to be added in post-production, were never fully finished at least, which may have saved Paramount Pictures and other financiers at least some money. Still, removing the expansive set piece that took ages to shoot wasn't a cheap process for World War Z. Though it was ultimately a tidy moneymaker for Disney, Maleficent didn't have an easy road to the big screen. Helmed by first-time director Robert Stromberg, the Angelina Jolie-led film underwent major reshoots written by The Blind Side's John Lee Hancock. The new material focused on Maleficent's origin, chronicling the younger years of the film's lead character. These reshoots were extensive enough to include overhauling the cast members of Maleficent's earliest sequence. Future Fallout star Ella Purnell took over the role of young Maleficent from India Isley, for example. Perhaps even more interesting is the fact that all of the screen time involving Peter Capaldi and Miranda Richardson as King Kinloch and Queen Ula was deleted in this process. Though they were cast as Maleficent's uncle and aunt, the actors were removed as a consequence of Stromberg wanting to cut Maleficent's runtime down. It's also likely that removing the Disney villain's direct blood relatives was a way to make her blossoming connection with human boy Stefan extra meaningful.
My parents are dead. Mine too.
Still, despite these factors, the costs of casting Richardson and Capaldi, not to mention the pricey effects used to turn them into fairies, make it somewhat surprising they never made it into Maleficent's final cut. Their scenes were never released to the public, but in 2024, photos of Capaldi in makeup as Kinloch were released online. Walt Disney Animation Studios' Bolt had a rough journey to movie theaters.
Hey there, are you lost, sweetie? Hey, wait!
Long before its theatrical debut, the movie was meant to be the big follow-up directorial effort for Lilo & Stitch filmmaker Chris Sanders. At the time, it was going by the title American Dog, and involved a similar plot about a Hollywood canine getting lost in everyday America, albeit with wackier character designs that evoked Sanders' distinctive art style. Announced in late 2003, Sanders and the team spent years working on the project for a summer 2008 release. Unfortunately, all this effort was for naught. Why? Well, Disney bought Pixar Animation Studios in 2006. That outfit's leadership, namely John Lasseter and Ed Catmull, took over Disney Animation Studios and began evaluating in-development projects, including American Dog. By late 2006, Sanders left the project over creative disputes with the new Disney Animation leadership. After this, an entirely new creative team was assigned to the movie, which quickly developed into a new production titled Bolt. In the book, On Animation, The Director's Perspective, Volume 2, Sanders confirmed that the final product was worlds removed from his initial vision. While it's never come out how much money was spent on American Dog before its Bolt transformation, the film's 3 years of production couldn't have been cheap. Bolt turned into a solid moneymaker, but getting there required a painful and expensive creative detour. Fantastic Four isn't the only 20th Century Fox Marvel movie to go through a last-minute overhaul focused on its third act. 2019's Dark Phoenix also originally had very different plans for what its grand finale would look like.
Jean, please!
You have no idea who I am.
While promoting Dark Phoenix's theatrical release, star Ty Sheridan revealed that one of the film's initial climaxes involved Charles Xavier and the X-Men visiting the President of the United States at the United Nations building in New York City to inform him that alien invaders are plotting to assassinate him. Jean Grey would have caused chaos at the UN in a sequence that also involved Skrulls. This deleted subplot would explain why Dark Phoenix cast notable actor Brian Darcy James as the POTUS, yet only briefly used him in the final cut. James McAvoy later added another layer of intrigue to this behind-the-scenes chaos by noting that Dark Phoenix had to change its finale to avoid evoking comparisons to another modern superhero title. That rival comic book movie wasn't named, but it was likely Captain Marvel, a 2019 Marvel Studios project that featured Skrulls. This would explain Dark Phoenix's decision to utilize the Dabari aliens and a smaller-scale finale set largely within train cars instead. Despite Sheridan and McAvoy's remarks, it's never been revealed what this initial deleted climax cost to make, but removing and reshooting the finale allegedly ended up ballooning Dark Phoenix's price tag past the $200 million mark. Steven Spielberg's films tend to become such beloved masterpieces that even their deleted scenes take on a mythic reputation. An unreleased deleted Jaws sequence, for example, has become legendary because of how brutally violent it reportedly was. Another scene that's tantalized the imaginations of genre cinema fans for years is a major alien-heavy sequence from War of the Worlds.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
This scene, given the moniker Camelot by the film's devotees, took place late in the film and saw Ray and his family watching alien tripods descend on people hiding in a once pristine neighborhood. The trio observes the mechanical entities killing humans as they cower inside their homes. A handful of Camelot images were published in Cinefex in mid-2005, but otherwise, this sequence has never been publicly released. Given that it would have been heavily centered on digital tripods and practical locations being decimated by these entities, Camelot had to be a costly sequence to produce. Despite this, it didn't make it into the final cut, nor did the home video release of War of the Worlds include it or any other deleted scenes. And yet, decades after War of the Worlds premiered, Camelot has become legendary on the internet. Today, the Rogue One corner of the Star Wars universe is a widely acclaimed domicile that gave the world the beloved TV show Andor. But a year before Rogue One's release, the blockbuster was a tormented affair.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Actually, we do, Cassian. Director Gareth Edwards' original cut was deemed problematic enough to warrant extensive reshoots, with Michael Clayton director Tony Gilroy brought on to write new material and help guide this portion of filming. While virtually every nook and cranny of Rogue One was altered by this process, much of the overhauling focused on Rogue One's final act, which involved the film's leads stealing the Death Star plans and finally working together as a group. It's not clear what the exact costs were of the scenes that were jettisoned from the final cut, but Gilroy alone earned at least $5 million just for creating the new Rogue One material. Who knows how much it cost to build the sets and hire crew members and other necessities needed for both the original and reshot versions of key scenes. Despite these deleted moments becoming infamous, none of them would make it to Rogue One's home video release. In Edwards' mind, these omitted elements were so brief that they didn't even qualify as scenes, and given their immense brevity, making them available to audiences just didn't make much sense to the filmmaker. So, Star Wars diehards can only experience a smattering of lost Rogue One moments in the film's pre-release trailers and sizzle reels. One of the darkest and most chaotic examples of costly scenes being cut from a movie at the last minute involves the 2017 Ridley Scott feature All the Money in the World. This crime thriller hinged its very first trailer on the closing reveal that Kevin Spacey played the elderly J. Paul Getty, combined with the fact that Spacey was making as much as $500,000 an episode on House of Cards as late as 2017. This particular role was undoubtedly a tremendous financial commitment for the studio. But then, a series of sexual assault and misconduct allegations against Spacey threw a wrench into the All the Money in the World machine. Weeks before the movie's late December 2017 release, Scott and company had to reshoot Spacey's scenes with Christopher Plummer. This endeavor cost an additional $10+ million on top of the money already laid out to shoot the original sequences. Ultimately, though, it worked out as well as it could have. It still made a profit, albeit a small one, and currently sits at 79% on Rotten Tomatoes. Years before Warner Bros. Discovery canned Batgirl deep into its post-production, DreamWorks Animation canceled the feature B.O.O, Bureau of Otherworldly Operations, just a little over 6 months before its announced release date. Some estimates suggest as much as 60% of B.O.O was fully completed when the axe fell.
Whoa!
Despite spending an alleged $100 million+ on B.O.O, former DreamWorks head honcho Jeffrey Katzenberg and other executives felt it was best that the production never see the light of day. Allegedly, concerns festered over the movie's quality, how its ending was shaping up, and the fact that the plot hinged on Seth Rogen's protagonist being a recently deceased father. The latter element in particular plagued the film in its final months of existence, as executives wondered whether kids would want to see a feature with such a heavy plot detail. All these problems ensured B.O.O.'s last-minute demise, and to this day, DreamWorks has never officially released any footage from the aborted production. Everything you've seen in this video, including the unfinished stuff, was unearthed in an unofficial capacity.